One of the many great things about Javier Milei's victory in the recent Argentinian presidential election is watching the establishment media and hardcore leftists lose their fucking minds. Here's Vaush, a supposedly a leftist anarcho-communist or libertarian socialist, but really just a shill for the DNC, just freaking out over Javier Milei's victory and the possibility that Argentina inch even slightly towards freedom.
All right, guys.
To Argentina now, where supporters of the right-wing outsider Javier Milei...
It happened in an election between a corrupt establishment, generally reviled politician, and a lunatic anarcho-capitalist. The lunatic...
That's actually a reasonably fitting title for Milei, whose television antics certainly are reminiscent of lunacy, even if he's spouting nothing but pure truth. The election was a little more complicated than that. Argentina's got a runoff voting system. So what happens is basically everybody runs initially, and then if it's a close contest, the top two candidates, they run again. And it's interesting. I think I prefer it to our first past the post system because there's less strategic voting. You can vote more for who you really want to win, and then if it's close, then you can vote. Well, you'll vote for your second favorite if your first favorite's not in the election. So it's people can vote more on ideological lines and less on pragmatic lines, which I think is going to bring you better results.
Anarcho-capitalist has won.
Have been celebrating his victory in the presidential election. Mr. Milei, known as El Loco, or the Madman, pulled off a major upset. Provisional result.
Also a serious academic economist, all sorts of published articles, books, master's degrees, and he was in a Rolling Stones cover band, so you know he knows how to party.
Results show the self-styled anarcho-capitalist won with 55.7%.
It's important to note, too, that Javier was running on a very milquetoast conservative campaign. Despite the chainsaw antics, his proposals were just some modest cuts in non-essential sectors of government spending. So, while he's a self-proposed anarcho-capitalist, he really campaigned in a very moderate manner, which is reasonable just given how absolutely messed up Argentina is. They've had 150% inflation rate, massive unemployment, and the thing was, so Sergio Massa was one of the sort of center-right members of the Peronist coalition. Peronism is a huge political movement in Argentina, sort of transcends the left-right spectrum, basically a cult of personality. First Peron, and then there's some other popular figures. I'm not going to act like I really understand Argentinian politics to the degree that a native would. This is just what I've gleaned from following the race over the last few months. There's some power figures within the Peronist movement. And then there's the conservative opposition. Now, they were in government. So first of all, the president, the former president of Argentina, didn't even run. He was so unpopular. He was basically chased out of town, 150% inflation, massive unemployment, just everybody's broke. Uh, and they've got currency controls, which, though widely disregarded, Western Union disregards them. It's that blatant, like, uh, but so the conservative opposition formed government before the Peronists. The Peronists were the ones that just had government, that just got defeated by Javier Milei here, and things were no better under them. So that's why actually that's why they didn't get the votes either. So it came down to a runoff election between Javier and this Peronist guy, and Javier won. You know, the Peronists have been in power for so long, and Argentina's been in decline for so long. They're just extremely unpopular. It doesn't mean that the population of Argentina suddenly adopted anarcho-capitalism. They're just anybody but Peronism at this point is their philosophy, I guess.
By a massive majority, too. A 12-point lead in favor of Milei. Incredible.
Of the vote, compared to 44% for his rival. Economy Minister Sergio Massa of the governing Peronists, who rapidly conceded defeat. Javier Milei has promised a new dawn.
I genuinely thought anarcho-capitalism was a joke ideology by political bros. It is. Anarcho-capitalism can't exist in real life. It is completely inapplicable. Anarcho-capitalists in practice are usually just fascists.
Says the communist. Talk about people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Let's talk about the Soviet Union or Cambodia or China or the ranters and the diggers, or every experiment in socialism having failed. You want to talk about an ideology that can't work in real life? Anarcho-capitalism absolutely can work, and in fact we've seen, if not it, then its cousin, laissez-faire capitalism, worked very well during the 19th and 18th century in America. Government spending was a tiny fraction of GDP, 3% of GDP. It basically wasn't there, and things thrived. So there's a huge empirical data suggesting that limited government, laissez-faire capitalism can work, and if that can work, then why not go one step further? Instead of having markets for 97% of the economy, have markets for 100% of the economy. Is that really that radical, as opposed to imagining that somehow we're going to transform human nature so that people aren't self-interested and live in some communist utopia in a post-scarcity society, which in reality just transcends into absolute chaos, death, and destruction. Communism's a death cult. You want to talk about an ideology that can't work? Talk about communism.
Now, the question is really, to what extent is he genuinely insane, and to what extent is he cleverly masquerading his fascist views behind a guise of anarcho-capitalist dreck?
Fascism has nothing to do with libertarianism. These are polar opposites. I mean, there's very little difference between fascism and socialism. In both fascism and socialism, the state has total control over society. Sure, in fascism, there's nominally some private interests, big business, that's in sort of an unholy alliance with the state and with unions. But in reality, if the companies don't play ball under fascism, and we saw this in Italy, we saw this in Nazi Germany, then the party officials would simply take over the company. So realistically, under fascism, the state completely dominates society, has total control over the means of production. Just like under socialism, it's only that with socialism, you have outright nationalization, whereas with fascism, there's supposedly quote unquote private businesses, but they're really just controlled by the party and controlled by the state. They're given quotas and directions about what to produce. There's no free enterprise system. There's no freedom. Just like under socialism, there's no freedom. So the true fascists are the socialists. Look what happened in every socialist country. You've had an authoritarian dictatorship, totalitarian government. Well, that's what fascism's all about. A totalitarian government, thugs that harass you, attack you. If you criticize the government, we see that in Cuba all the time. You know, they have government agents. If you put a flag on your house, you know, or something that's critical of the government thugs will come and harass you and beat you and take it down because they can't tolerate any dissent. They have to have this iron grip on the rule of the country. So the fascists are the socialists, the communists, not people who want a free market economy, who want freedom, limited government. That's got nothing to do with fascism. That's retarded.
And in his case, there's a very high likelihood that he actually is just insane, which would probably make him less destructive than if he was.
Oh, he's a true believer.
Maliciously dishonest.
For a country ravaged by debt and...
I mean, nobody's going to pretend to be an anarcho-capitalist to win an election. That's not a viable strategy. I have no idea how Javier even won in the first place. It's just the perfect storm of just a totally incompetent, corrupt ruling party and an opposition that's just as bad, I guess. I mean...
rocketing inflation, pledging to do away with the central bank and replace the peso with the US dollar. Donald Trump congratulated him on his victory, saying he will truly make Argentina great again. And Brazil's former president Bolsonaro said hope shines again in South America. Katie Watson reports.
For Argentina, this was a political earthquake. Javier Milei
Argentina has a banger flag, I have to say. I like that baby blue with the like sun emoji, the creepy sun emoji. This is very good.
That is pretty solid.
This is very powerful.
won by a wider than expected margin, and his victory sent a clear message. Argentinians wanted change.
La situación de Argentina
Bad Empanada is in shambles right now. Bad Empanada is going to like take to the jungle and wage like a Maoist people's war against the Milei regime, you know? He's going to be like firebombing you know, like post office.
Situation in Argentina is critical. The changes our country needs are drastic. There is no room for gradualism. There is no room for half measures.
Mr. Milei was a relative unknown until a few months ago, but his brash manner, including wielding a chainsaw at a campaign event, got him noticed. I'm
not sure how much he's really going to be able to accomplish with a presumably hostile bicameral legislature against him.
Country where annual inflation is now over 140%.
The reason why he was wielding that chainsaw is because it's a big part of his campaign promise that he's going to cut government spending. He's basically said like he's going to cut every single government program.
And 2 in 5 Argentinians now live in poverty.
I don't think that's accurate. I don't think. I think he expressly said he wouldn't cut like healthcare and education, those things. I could be wrong.
A drastic new approach to fixing economic problems was a clever move.
I think this time Argentina needed a change, and that's why I bet on this new proposal. We are doing really bad as a country, and I hope Milei does not disappoint us. With this current government, we have gone from bad to worse.
But the campaign was divisive, as his rival acknowledged when he conceded defeat.
I called him, convinced that the most important thing for us Argentinians tonight is to remember that working together, dialogue, and respect for people.
The real question is Milei going to be able to build inroads with the political class in order to achieve his agenda and at the same time not betray his promise of reforming and reducing the size and scope of the state?
Peace rather than this violence is the best path we should take.
But it won't be easy for Milei. On Sunday, it was clear many are disappointed with politicians and their empty promises of change.
Yeah, so it should be understood that this is really like a lesser of two evils in the minds of many Argentinian voters. It's not so much people being super excited for Milei. His opposition, Sergio Massa, from my understanding, is basically just like disappointment congealed in a politician. Like just a
I gotta say though, right towards the end of the Peronist rule, Massa did completely eliminate the income tax, basically, in Argentina, which is a pretty based Giga Chad move. So it's going to be interesting to see what Milei does. Is he going to reinstitute the income tax, which is, completely contra libertarian theory, or is he going to default? Because I don't see how he's going to make the IMF loan payments without an income tax, unless he really gets creative with tariffs and a VAT or something. I actually, in his shoes, I would default. I don't think Malay's actually even stated any sort of desire or indication he wants to do that. Maybe he's going to spring it as a surprise, but I don't think so. He doesn't seem the type.
privileged, powerful, sits in the chair, promises, doesn't do shit, blah, blah. Just it's a desperation vote. People are lunging out and looking for anything. It's essentially...
And you're basing that all on the picture, or what?
Like a more pronounced version of the 2016 election, where a lot of what happened was really down to people not caring about Hillary more so than... Like, Trump did not get an astonishing number of votes in 2016. Hillary just got fewer votes than anyone expected because nobody cared,
Argentina gets pretty high turnout, although it's not that impressive because voting is mandatory and you face a very modest fine if you don't vote.
But I'm not exactly an expert on this guy. I looked over his Wikipedia page, and he just, the impression that I get from looking over what he has done is that every time he gets elected, people basically shrug and go, yeah, I guess this guy. And then he promises stuff, and then some stuff happens, and he's very corrupt, and not much gets done.
I mean, I don't think he's even gotten elected before. He was just maybe to the Congress or whatever. He wasn't the president. He was the economic guy or whatever, I think.
And not much gets better, and that's just
economic minister.
That's how it is. I'm sure there's a lot more complexity to it, but I think that disappointment and bitterness is what explains this. This is essentially the result of a protest vote. So?
I'm a bit sad about the whole situation. I don't know how this will help us move the country forward. At least we are voting and exercising democracy, but I'm not happy with either candidate.
Yeah, 140% inflation. Holy shit, wait, hold on, let me see the chart. Argentina inflation chart. Jesus Christ. The top line here, this is 120%. That's what this line is. Inflation rate.
Current exchange rate is 1,000 to 1.
By month, Argentina 2023. You know how groceries have gone up 50% in price? Imagine them.
This is why actually most of the people in Argentina use the US dollar. There's hundreds of billions of US dollars in circulation in Argentina, because if you hold US dollars instead of if you hold pesos, your money's going to depreciate in value so quickly. But if you hold US dollars, then it'll at least hold on to most of its value, even with sort of high inflation in America at the moment. Argentina has the largest circulation of American currency outside of the United States of America, even more than countries like Ecuador or Panama, which use the American dollar as their currency.
Tripling in price in the span of 1 year. Yeah, it's not good. Now, I'm not going to pretend I understand the...
Well, no, 150% inflation would mean that groceries go up 150% in 1 year, and That's actually like those are the latest year-on-year figures, so it'd be less than that prior. Like in January of 21, it was only 40%. So it only just now got up to, still is very, very bad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that level of inflation is very, very bad. It's not quite hyperinflation like you saw in the Weimar Republic or Venezuela recently, or Zimbabwe, which just completely wrecks the economy. But even these ultra high levels of inflation, like we're seeing in Turkey as well, has a huge impact on the economy, and basically people just adopt another currency. Probably Turkey, everybody's using the euro. That's speculation, but I'll have to double check on that.
The exact reasons why Argentina is experiencing a very high inflation rate, I would like to know. I'll get into it soon.
It's pretty fucking obvious, bud. Their central bank is printing money like crazy because their politicians are spending money like crazy. It's not complicated.
But yeah, again, stuff like this tends to lead people to protest vote.
Mr. Milei has also pledged to loosen gun laws and ban abortion, and he and his vice president...
Again, there we go. Anarcho-capitalism at its finest. Freedom, freedom, freedom. No government intervention. Have guns, ban abortion. Yeah. Like I said, he's not actually an anarcho-capitalist. He's just, a hardcore... he's a fascist with a libertarian bent.
So, guns, absolutely nothing wrong with guns. Especially when you have a country like Argentina, where the prospect of a dictatorship is not really that far off. You've got radical leftists that have been in power for a long time. I mean, they're next door to Venezuela, where there is presently a communist dictatorship. Makes sense that the population should have arms. Do I agree with Milei on abortion? No, but that doesn't make him a fascist. He's Catholic and becoming a Jew, actually. They're trying to convert to Judaism. Catholicism is a huge part of Latin American culture, and yeah, that means a hostility to abortion. But it's such a non-issue. It's not, I don't think, something he campaigned on. Yeah, that's his view. Okay. Not everybody agrees on everything. It doesn't make him a fascist because he's opposed to abortion. I mean, it's a tough issue, really. I mean, I think that it does come down to a woman's autonomy, but let's get real. You are taking a human life. A fetus is really no different from a newborn in that it's not sentient, it's not aware, it's special because it will become a human being. So I think the leftist view on the whole thing is a little cavalier. Don't get me wrong. I believe fundamentally the most important thing is self-ownership. If a woman does not want to carry the baby to term, that's her choice. It's her body, absolutely. But I think that we do need to consider the whole situation with some gravity, and think about the miracle of the human existence, the fact that we are sentient beings, capable of understanding and influencing the universe, and consciously making decisions and choices, and there is something magical and special about human life, it is, I think, very much sacred. So while I do support the woman's right to self-ownership, absolute control over what's going on with her body, I do think that it's a very serious decision, and one that at least requires some introspection. And I don't think it's fair to label anybody who opposes this practice a fascist. I think that's a perfect perfectly valid belief that's shared by a lot of people around the world. That's their culture. That's their religious convictions. And who am I to say that my worldview is necessarily correct? How about a little humility and understanding that sometimes people have different opinions? That doesn't make them the devil. They don't need to be attacked or silenced or called fascist. That has nothing to do with fascism. Fascism is the merger of state and corporate interests, not what your belief about human life or whether doctors should engage in abortion is.
Repeatedly being accused of lacking respect for democracy and calling into question the official number of victims during the country's dictatorship.
But this is very common of radical leftists. They don't understand what fascism is, so they just use it as a smear term against anybody that they disagree with for anything. You're fascist, you're racist. They don't care about the truth. It's all just a means to smear and attack and denigrate their opponents.
Told Milei's victory has been a shock for Argentina's traditional...
Oh yeah, his supporters were also screaming fraud when they were counting the votes for the election the other day, even before they had finished. Like he did the Trump thing where he said like 3 million illegals voted, and then he ended up winning anyway, but then he insisted still that 3 million illegals voted. You know, he basically did that.
So, according to PBS.org, the allegations Milei made were actually for the first round of voting, not the runoff election, which he just won, which made him president, but the first round, which he also won. He win? Yeah, he won. No, I think he actually came in second. Sorry, but basically he tied for first because it was the same prize, right? But he got fewer votes. So he claimed irregularities, which, there's probably always going to be irregularities, maybe on all sides. Although I would not put it past a entrenched political dynasty that's held power for so long to rig a vote. As Joseph Stalin said, it's not who votes that matters, it's who counts the votes. And then there's some speculation here that his remarks were more to motivate his base and to get them to be monitors at voting stations, just to make sure every vote got counted, and then to fire up his base and get them out. So I don't think it was, he was trying to make a coup if he lost or anything, but it was sort of political maneuvering. At least that's how the PBS article portrays it.
Javier Milei said he'd deliver change for Argentina, but few understand what that will look like. One thing's clear, it'll be unlike anything that's come before. Katie Watson, BBC News.
Well, earlier I spoke to Mimi Swaby about Milei's victory.
Defying pollsters who predicted a really close result, Javier Milei has been the runaway victor with nearly 56% of the votes against his rival.
He defended Thatcher. And if you know the history between the UK and Argentina over the Falklands. Yeah. Weirdly, he has made the claim that Argentina has sovereignty over the Falklands, but has also defended Thatcher and called her like one of the most influential or important people or whatever.
So he said that basically he made a very soft claim about the Falklands. And the Falklands are sort of a hot-button issue in Argentinian politics. So he said that, we lost, we have a claim to the Falklands, but we have to pursue diplomatic means. So that was just sort of kissing the ring. There's no point spitting in the face of the electorate over a non-issue, creating a controversy, pissing people off over something that doesn't matter, right? So Argentina wants the Falklands. It's a huge issue there, and no, I don't like Thatcher personally. I think she made a lot of horrible decisions. The problem is so yes, and what she did was basically she engaged in class warfare, like from the Marxist standpoint of class warfare of rich against the poor. She moved the burden of taxation from high income earners towards the poor, and well, I do believe that we should aim for more of like a flat tax system, in absolute terms, not like even a 15% tax rate, but like a $500 tax rate. But the point is, if you're going to move towards that system, you have to shrink government to the point where people can afford it. What Thatcher did was just keep the government spending at the present level, but shift the burden from high income earners to low income earners with her poll tax. So that's not sustainable, and that led to basically the end of Thatcher's rule. There were riots in the streets. But Thatcher did, one good thing she did was privatize a lot of the British economy, which had been nationalized under the influence of the Fabian socialists who aimed for gradualism and socialism by incrementalism, one industry at a time, basically. But yeah, Thatcher, I'm not a fan of Thatcher, and probably indicates that Javier Milei, for all his studies in Austrian economics, is a little more conservative than libertarian, buys into this whole Thatcher-Reagan mythology that conservatives love to put out there, that's not actually the truth. These guys, they were not good leaders. They did not make good decisions. They didn't shrink government spending at all. And there's a whole mythology around Reagan and Thatcher built up on both sides of the political spectrum, left and right. Neither of them really get what happened there, but yeah, I mean, whatever, not a big deal.
In the in modern history, this is most explainable by the fact that he is a fascist, where he will admire authoritarian tendencies in other authoritarians, but he also has like a strong nationalist bent. Like, you know, again, anarcho-capitalism is not a real ideology. There are just some fascists who emphasize business freedoms as like the through line to their...
Au contraire, mon frère, anarcho-capitalism is a real ideology. It has its roots in thought that goes back thousands of years to the work of Vaush, you know, who preached the value of spontaneous order and restraint in government. It's an ideology with a deep history in Western thought. Even Aristotle observed that property which is owned privately is more productive than that is what is owned communally, because of the tragedy of the commons. And you can see elements of proto anarcho-capitalist thought in the Spanish scholastics, in the medieval church. You know, great thinkers like St. Thomas Aquinas, who developed the idea of natural law. You know, the idea that a law, an unjust law, is no law. This is such a powerful concept, which you would think a libertarian like Vaush would appreciate, because it has the ability to constrain the state. Absent natural law, it's where is the challenge to state abuse? You know, where is the theoretical underpinning to opposition to authority? this idea that power must be justified for it to be exercised, and it's very fundamental in the development of liberalism, which again, connects directly to anarcho-capitalism. Liberalism, an incredible transformative ideology that changed England from a mercantilist, backwards, medieval continent to a tremendous, flourishing society, producing incredible wealth, not only for the elite and the most successful members of society, but for everybody, for the working class, for the so-called proletariat, people working in factories, people working nowadays in retail jobs, minimum wage jobs, enjoy a very high standard of living precisely because of the ideology of liberalism and capitalism, the economic system of capitalism that has so transformed the productivity of labor through capital accumulation, through encouraging technological development, that ordinary people today live lives of incredible luxury compared to everybody a century ago, and the vast majority of people on this planet today who live in non-capitalist countries, have a very low standard of living compared to those in the West. So no, anarcho-capitalism isn't fascism. It's not a joke ideology. It is the accumulation of centuries, of millennia of thought, of reason, of great thinkers, exploring the concept of the state and economics and law and society. And this is the culmination, an ideology that is completely voluntary, that is based upon consent, that is based upon freedom. It's a society without coercion, or at least without legalized coercion, minimized coercion, that outlaws the initiation of force, that outlaws coercion.
Or, to their political ends.
Sergio Massa. And this has really upheaved a political status quo which has long been dominated for decades now in Argentina by two main
parties. It's not because he's a fascist. It's because he's a smart politician. He understands, you don't have to be contrarian. You don't have to fight every minor little battle. As Jefferson says, in matters of style, go with the flow. But in matters of principle, stand firm like a rock. Okay, I butchered that phrase, but I think you get the gist of it. So there's no reason for him to... Well, it's not like he's going to invade the Falklands, but he's just playing up to the nationalism and saying what he has to say, which is fine on unimportant issues, so that when he has something important to say on an important issue, people will listen to him because he listened to them about all their nonsense, superficial nonsense that doesn't really matter.
Parties. Now, when Javier Milei first announced his entry into politics back in 2020, very few people thought he was serious. He suggested he would blow up the system. Yet 3 years later, this
blow up the central bank, specifically.
Far-right
which is responsible for the 150% inflation rate, by the way, that is devastating the Argentinian economy.
Libertarian radical figure.
He also boinked his sister, allegedly. He looks like his dad boinked his sister.
Far-right economist and former
Vaush, always a pervert.
TV pundit, is now the next president.
Is he picking his nose?
Of Argentina, and will soon hold the keys to Casa Rosada on the...
What's the point of mining nose gold if you can't share it with the townspeople?
10th of December. This has been an election race with surprises, twists and turns, but this outside radical figure with a...
There you go, get in there. Dig deep.
Campaign full of influencers on social media. It's his combat...
Got it.
and aggressive at times approach, which has been seen as a bit of a lightning rod for angry voters at this economic crisis, and that is what has really galvanized people towards him. It's also worth noting that without a party of their own in this really polarizing runoff election, the centre-right has formed a bit of an uneasy alliance with Milei, publicly backing him for this vote. And now that is thought to help have pushed him really far over this victory line in this shocking and huge win for him.
And
When have I seen that before?
He is promising an end to the soaring inflation and debt levels in Argentina. How does he propose to go about that?
Well, he says he's going to tackle this 143% inflation by ditching the Argentine peso, dollarizing the economy, and eliminating the central bank. He has some interesting proposals of...
All right, right off the bat, what's the opening proposal? What if we made our entire economy completely reliant on the U.S. dollar, hedged all of our stability to the United States?
Seeing the government...
It's not that crazy. There's a number of countries that use the U.S. dollar instead of their own currency. Panama, Cambodia, Ecuador. Aruba has mostly uses the dollar. They've got their own guilder or whatever, which I think is pegged to the dollar. There's a bunch of countries, although Argentina's a little bigger. But the real thing is Argentina already uses the U.S. dollar. They've got 200 billion USD in circulation, and really, he doesn't even need to stop using the peso. What he should do is just eliminate the currency controls, allow the peso to fluctuate freely against the dollar, allow the use of dollars, the purchasing of dollars at the market rate, and then curb any inflation, curb any money printing that's going on with the central bank, and you should stop the inflation just like that. Even if you don't, people could just use more dollars. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with using dollars. Certainly a lot better than suffering from 150% inflation. It's not the ideal solution, which would be like a gold standard or freely competing currencies, which I guess he could also do. Ecuador tried to adopt sort of a Bitcoin standard, which hasn't seen much popular acceptance. Maybe lack of smartphones or something, part of the problem there. But yeah, the U.S. currency is one of the most stable in the world. Any port of the storm, I mean, what's your solution for the 150% inflation? You got to do something, and switching to the U.S. dollar is definitely a lot better than doing nothing.
Size, which he says is his omnipresent kind of state, which has only caused people suffering throughout Argentina.
Can he even do that?
He wants to get rid
Sure.
of the Ministry of Culture, Sport, and very controversially of women, and merge the health and...
I mean, personally, I think it would be better for the long term in their country to stabilize their economy. Keep in mind, they can dollarize, but they can't print U.S. dollars, which means that if their economy runs on U.S. dollars, they have to get all of their money, all of their dollars from the United States. Only
That's the whole point. Because they can't print them, they're not going to have any inflation. Where do you think the inflation comes from? Printing money. It's simple supply and demand. If supply increases, demand stays the same, price goes down. So the price of money is reflected in the cost of goods. So that's the whole point, is that they can't print money. And people say, well, you need to be able to print money in a crisis. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's a lie. That's a myth. Printing money is not a solution to economic crises. It is